Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Shoals Marine Laboratory's weekly seminar series, affectionately referred to as our Rock Talk seminars. I'm Dr. David Buck, the Associate Director of the lab. For those of you that are not familiar with us, SML is the largest and oldest undergraduate-focused marine lab in the country. We are jointly operated by the University of New Hampshire and Cornell University. The lab is located in the southern part of the Gulf of Maine within the Isles of Shoals, a group of islands located approximately 10 miles offshore of Portsmouth, New Hampshire. The Rock Talk series will be running through the remainder of 2020. Historically, these seminars have been an opportunity for everyone on our island campus to come together in a seminar-style lecture where we learn about emerging new topics related to marine science and conservation. Obviously, this year we've gone virtual. And the format for tonight's talk will be a 45-minute talk followed by a 15-minute question and answer. If you'd like to ask questions, I would ask for you to please use the Q&A function that should be located down at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Also, if you have any technical challenges during the seminar, please ping myself or and one of us, either another Shoals Marine Lab staff or myself, will try to help you out with any technical difficulties. I'll then facilitate the Q&A 15-minute period at the end of the lecture. So it's an honor for me tonight to have a chance to introduce Dr. Daniel Pauly. Dr. Pauly is joining us from the University of British Columbia, where he is a professor in the Institute for the Oceans and Fisheries. He's also the principal investigator for a research initiative called The Sea Around Us, which is focused on understanding marine fisheries and helping stakeholders identify viable solutions for challenges related to fisheries management. Dr. Pauly's 40-plus year career has included positions that have taken him truly around the world, from Germany to the Philippines to British Columbia. He's widely published in the peer-reviewed literature on topics related to fisheries science and marine conservation. I was looking today, one of his earlier papers on the topic, which was published in 1998, has been cited over 5,000 times according to Google Scholar. So he's had a phenomenal academic career. But in addition to his inspiring career in academia, Dr. Pauly has served as a board member on a wide variety of non-governmental organizations and currently serves on the board of the Ocean Foundation, which is an international NGO, as well as Oceana, which is based in Washington, D.C. He's also participated as a scientist and author in a multitude of white papers, not the least of which includes the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment Report. And among his numerous other accomplishments and services to the wider community, I wanted to give a particular shout out to his work with FishBase. FishBase is a global scale biological information system that houses, I believe, currently over 34,000 information on over 34,000 species of fin fishes. That's a tremendously powerful tool, both for researchers and resource managers alike. So as I believe we will learn tonight from Dr. Pauly, he has dedicated his career to understanding fisheries science and supporting approaches that help conserve our global oceans. Without further ado, I would like to pass the virtual mic to Dr. Pauly to provide us with his perspectives on fisheries and global warming. So Dr. Pauly, if you'd like to turn on your mic and share your screen, and welcome to Shoals Marine Lab Rock Talk.
Yep, my mic is on, and you don't need to see my face all the time. I will share my PowerPoint, and here we go. Is it shared with you guys? Do you see it? The way
Dr. Pauly, I don't see
I
your
have to share.
yet.
Yeah. Well, I have to share screen. I forgot. Yep.
It should be enabled for you.
Yep. There we go. So here we go. You have it? Yeah? You see
Yes,
it?
we can see it. Yes, we can see it now. Thank you.
the global impact of fisheries and global warming on marine ecosystem. Most people are used to fisheries that take place in a given place, the Gulf of Maine, and the fisheries usually concern one species, cod in the Gulf of Maine. But what I would present to you is a global view of fisheries, because fisheries are a global ecosystem, a global system, like the weather pattern or so. But first, we will start at the beginning. We all are descendant of Africans that evolved there from bipedal apes about 300,000 years ago, and at the beginning, a few million years before that, we were really prey all the time. We were prey of large animals such as massive birds of prey or big cats, and we were able to get away from that, to not be prey through the use of language, probably, which enabled us to collaborate, and collaboration allowed us to defend ourselves, and from prey we became a fearsome predator. And the first use of seafood or sea product that we can demonstrate is from about 160,000 years ago in South Africa. There was a cave, and in there is abalone shells that were obviously used, that were eaten, the abalone, but the shells were used to hold pigment, ochre, that people used to paint their face, and that indicates a need to self-identify, to identify yourself, and a need to express the self that indicates symbolic thinking. So humans, when they moved out of Africa, were equipped with all the stuff that we have now in our head. And the first harpoons, which is quite a sophisticated tool, were developed in about 80, 90,000 years ago. At least we have evidence of that, that way back, also before humans left Africa. And as humans left Africa, they gradually invaded the other continents, Europe, Asia first actually, South Asia, Southeast Asia, and then the more difficult terrain, like the inside of Asia, which was very cold, and the Americas and the islands. And everywhere humans came, there was a mass slaughter of large herbivores. In North America, for example, about 40 genera of large animals. In fact, bisons and elks are about the only large ones that survived in North America. Horses, mammoth, mastodon, and sloth were all annihilated. In Australia as well, but also in New Zealand or Madagascar, the big birds that occur in both of this area. The only place where not many mammals were killed by, large mammals were killed by humans, were in Africa, where they co-evolved, and they knew that apes with sticks were very dangerous. So the other things that that change us very much is the invention of agriculture. And this picture is not very good because actually there were several centers. They were not necessarily connected. In the Middle East, wheat culture and barley culture. In East Asia, obviously rice. And in South America, potato. In North America, in Mexico, corn. And all these crops enabled the human population to increase and agriculture to become the dominant form of production. And you will ask yourself, what is got to do with fisheries? But note the expansion. And with agriculture came deforestation, desertification, and erosion. And in the US, for example, you will know that you have learned your history classes that the Confederacy, the Southern states, didn't want to. The issue of the Civil War was not the maintenance of slavery in the Confederacy. It was its expansion in the West. And why would they want to expand slavery into the West? Because the soils were destroyed by the way agriculture was run. Essentially, agriculture lead to, especially in the past, to deforestation, erosion, desertification, and this spreads also. This has spread from the core area of agriculture. Now, another expansion that will be almost the last. From Taiwan, we have the Austronesian people, the Filipino, Indonesian, the Hawaiian, invading the whole Pacific and much of the Madagascar, and Madagascar as well, and certain parts of Africa which are now devoid of Austronesian people. So here we have a language group and a way of expanding agriculture, because they were agricultural people. Now we make a big jump, and the big jump is into industrialization, which started in Britain, the use of fossil fuel, coal, to produce steel, which spreads very rapidly, and now is again spread all over the world. And now we see that China is the major steel producer. At the beginning, it was only England. So you can see how steel has moved. Now, finally, we get into fisheries, because with steel and steam engine, we have the first industrialization of fisheries. And these boats, the first steam trawlers that were deployed around Great Britain, they were not very efficient by today's standard, but they were enormously efficient compared with boats of similar size that were sail or you cannot row. Well, you can have rowboats that are big like this. Basically, they are enormously efficient, and they were deployed around the British Isles. And within 10 years, they had liquidated the accumulated fish biomass around the British Isles. And it was necessary for them to move away from the shore, to move into the North Sea and the North Atlantic. And you can see in the graph, the catches increased very rapidly. Then there was World War I. Young men and boats were used for other purposes. Again, high catches, again, World War II. And then there's a decline. Why? Because the resources are emptied. There's no more fish out there. There's no more fish. And basically, the war on fish has been run, and successfully. Now, in ecosystem, food goes up, and energy, if you like, goes up from phytoplankton, the algae that fix the energy of the sun, and into zooplankton, little animals that we cannot eat. They are a few millimeters size, and they are consumed by prey fish, sardine, anchovies, herrings, that are liked, that are eaten in lots of countries, but not necessarily in the US. In the US and Canada, people like big fish. So big fish are top predators like tuna, like cod, and so on. And they are they are 3 steps above the phytoplankton. That is, they have a trophic level, a level of a feeding level, if you like, that is around 4. It can be 4.3, 4.2, and so on. So basically, the food goes up, but every time you go up, the food is consumed. 90% of it is lost, is burnt to maintain the body of the animals. So from phytoplankton, you lose 10% each step. So if you catch 1 ton of tuna, for example, you need 10 tons of prey fish, which needs 100 tons of zooplankton, which need 100 tons of phytoplankton. Now, we know the trophic level of all fish. That is a database of all fish. Indeed, I have founded this database. This is now a big project that involves about 50 people full-time, every day, every day, in various countries, from China to Brazil to many countries in Europe. And they peopled this database that it becomes, and maintain it, and this database you can use for information on fish. I'm sure you use it in your lab. And for each fish, you can get the trophic level. That is, for example, this grouper had the trophic level of 4.4. So we also know how much phytoplankton is produced in the world, because satellite can transform the light that is measured in different parts of the world into estimates of how much plankton there is. So basically, if you know how much we catch at every place in the world, and how much the trophic level of everything that we catch, we can calculate everything in terms of plankton, and we can re-express this in terms of the plankton that is available. If you catch a tuna in the middle of the dark blue area, this represents an area where there is almost no plankton. So it's very difficult to produce the fish. And if you remove the fish from there, this has a big impact. But on the other hand, in areas that are coastal, you can have lots of plankton, and you have to take much more fish to have an impact. And so I will show you how much of the primary production was used in 1950. In 1950, you can see that only around Japan and around Europe, where in North America, especially where you are, where the fishery is so developed that they had an impact on the sea. You can see this corresponds more or less to the industrialized areas of the world. Now, we are running a film that will be a picture per year until the present. This is the expansion of fishing in the world. Fishing, since we are now in the 70s, now in the 80s, fishing expanded throughout the world, and you are now in the 21st century, and it stops here. So now you remember how it looked before. This is now our impact on the sea. And you can see that our impact is not anymore in a coast, but also in the open ocean. How come it is so big in the open ocean? Well, for example, as I mentioned, the primary production, the plankton production, is very low. So if you take tuna, which need lots of plankton to be produced, you have a big impact. So that's the impact. And you can see that this expansion is in space. And you can see now why I showed you the expansion of humans, the expansion of agriculture, the expansion of pollination, the expansion of industry, because all this expansion are, in a sense, that's how we express ourselves. That's how we do things. We don't stay where we are, and we are not content with what we have. We explode. So here is China in 1950. That's where China fished in 1950, and that's where China fished now. Now, I can produce the same map from Spain, South Korea, France, Japan. It is the same. And in fact, what you saw in terms of plankton, this is a reflection of these catches. We also fish deeper. We fish now into depth of 1 mile and more, a mile deep. And we fish commercially increasingly, in an increasing fraction of the fish that we catch are caught from very deep water. And now, how about this expansion? What is it? This expansion is due to more and more vessels being launched, and they get bigger and bigger, and you get a representation of this. This is all the fleets of the world where the power of the engine is added up. So small engine, big engine, all the engine is added up the power, and you get this growth. And you will see, you note that North America, it plays almost no role. What plays a role in fisheries is Europe and Asia, especially Asia, and of it, especially China. Now, the problem is that we don't have good data on the catches of all these boats. There is, all countries are supposed to send the catch data that they have to the UN, to a UN organization. It's called the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, in FAO in Rome, and they do that, but the data that they send is quite incomplete. So if you look at the puzzle, we want to reconstruct the real catch of the world. And the real catch of the world is what is reported plus everything else. And what is everything else is the catch that you don't report. For example, in the US doesn't report the catch that is thrown overboard. It doesn't report the catch that is caught by recreational fishers. And it doesn't report the catch that is caught within 3 miles of the shore, because it is reported by states, and the US reports to FAO only the catch that is made in federal waters beyond 3 miles offshore to 200 miles offshore. And all countries of the world have problems like that. They don't report the sports fishery, the recreational fishery. They don't report the discarding, the fish that they throw overboard, and so on. And so we end up, for example, I should have taken the US. For example, you see the black line here. This is the catch that is officially reported, and the catch that we have here above that is the catch that is not reported. And our website gives such time series for all countries of the world without exception. So when added up, all the country reconstruction show that we are catching much more than the FAO reports, much more than officially reported, and moreover that this catch is declining. The reported catch, the official catch of the world, is about 80 million tons per year, and the real catch of the world is about 120 million tons per year. And it's declining rapidly in reality, and a little bit less rapidly officially. So that is the trend of catch in the world. The underlying quantity of fish, in other words, the biomass of fish in the water, is declining as shown here. There is only one region in the world where the catch are increasing. That is in the Pacific Ocean, where the climate has a lot to do with that. There is some good sign. For example, in your country, in the US, there is a tendency to rebuild the stocks, and you can see that that tail in the present, in the near present, it goes up again a little bit. That is because of reasonable fishery management, and it is this graph is going to be updated very soon. It actually the upward trend continues, but it's the only place in the world. Other countries go down and down and down. It never stops. So all this fishing has an effect. One of them is that the composition of the catch changes, and the underlying biomass in the ocean also changes. We concentrate fishing mainly on high trophic level fish, on big fish at first. And then gradually, as they become more scarce, we go down. It's called fishing down marine food web. And this was described in a paper I wrote that was mentioned in '98. And that is indeed enormously cited because it is found in all countries of the world. But it also occurs in Canada, for example, and in China. That is another example of it happening in China. That is, the black line is inshore, and the one with the white spot is offshore. And at the end of the arrow, when you fish all the way down, if you're not careful, you end up, as they do in China, with a mess. Because half of the catch in China is not fish that you can eat. It is a mixture of small fish, of plankton, and rubbish, and that is then fed to farmed fish, aquaculture. It cannot be eaten by people, and half of the catch is now like that. This is if you're not careful about managing your fisheries well. Now, you ask yourself, what is it that feeds this expansion that is so characteristic for fisheries? And the previous expansions, for example, the human expansion into the continent, is population growth. Population growth feeds, people have to leave and to search for other territories elsewhere if they live off the land. Agriculture also produce surplus, which is used for which allows you to bring more children to adulthood, who then need land, and basically lots of quarrels about land, and basically you have to get new land. And so population growth was a driver of extension before. Now we have the economic expansion, and this, as the vessels, as there are more and more vessels, they don't earn so much, and the problem then is that they get government subsidies. This is not so much a problem in the US. It is a problem in the US, but not much. It's much stronger in Canada, in Europe, and especially in Asia. Again, in China, the boats get a huge subsidy for fishing abroad, and that pushes them into fishing in part illegally, and it maintains a fleet that is much too big for the resources. And you can look at the subsidies that are given in Asia, in Europe, in North America, and so on. And the bad subsidies, the so-called capacity enhancing, is a subsidy that allow you to fish even though there is not much fish. And this goes from cheap loans to buy the boat, guaranteed loan, and fuel subsidy that you pay less for the fuel, and so on, including, this is not counted here, slavery on board. There is lots of boats that employ, if that's the word, slave, a modern slave. There is lots of modern slavery in modern fisheries, and that is a topic that has been clarified in the last years by people like Marta Mendoza and Ian Urbina. They have written in the New York Times and other outlets lots of stuff about it. So, but actually we know how to deal with fisheries. They should not be subsidized because if a boat cannot make money on its own, it is likely that the stock it relies on is overexploited. And then we can manage fisheries, and most of the US manage fisheries reasonably well, but most of the world doesn't. You set up quota that are conservative, they don't fish too much, and the stocks can rebuild. And then you create national parks or marine protected area to protect biodiversity. And again, the US has been exemplary in creation of large marine protected area around the Northwest Hawaiian Island. It has not been possible to create marine protected area much in your part of the world, but the idea will gradually be successful. Now, while this goes on, things are heating up. So we know, and it was news about 20 years ago, that the fish tend to move north. So basically, that is the North Sea between the UK, Germany, and Norway. These fish, the distribution of this fish is gradually going north as the temperature increases. And they do that because they're not looking for cooler water, they're trying to go where the water is the same temperature as before. And they're moving poleward because they try to maintain themselves in the same temperature. And we wanted to imitate this behavior, model this behavior, and had a postdoc at the time. His name is William Chung, and he made a model that is to be illustrated here. Basically, we have for mapping, we have mapped all fish of the world, commercial fish of the world. We have mapped them. So, for example, this fish, the yellow croaker, has a distribution from South Korea to the north of Taiwan, and the Yellow Sea, the East China Sea, and the South China Sea. And basically, the center of the distribution is about in the East China Sea. And if you suppose this distribution over a temperature atlas, you will see that 15 degrees centigrade, I don't know about Fahrenheit, if you 15 degrees centigrade is about the temperature they really like. So this postdoc of mine at the time, he then made in each of these cells, the half-degree longitude and latitude, a little model that the fish grow, and when they are adults, they produce eggs and larvae, and they move into the adjacent cells. If this adjacent cell has a right temperature, they grow and produce again larvae for the next generation. If not, if the cell temperature is not right, they die out. And then we got temperature, projected temperature in the next 50 years from Princeton University, our colleagues, we work with them. And basically, the model was run, and basically you can see the animals moving north as exploring and moving north, and essentially moving away from Taiwan and invading North Korea. They are the only one who can invade North Korea, and invading southern Japan. Basically, they move up. Now that is, in reality, it takes about 1 hour to compute, because there are lots of computation, and it is done for 2,000 species at the same time. That is a few computers running a few days, and then we have a map of the world that looks like that. This map shows where the species go and where they leave. You can see that the species eventually go to the North and South Pole, and that they leave the area that is here in red. Ignore the South Pole because it involves only a few species. Look at there is a band in the tropics that fish leave the tropics because it's too warm. And the next pictures show what will really happen in fisheries, which is that a band in the tropics will see the catch decline because the fish really are leaving because it's too warm. And the other countries, the other places will benefit, especially the Norway and the country in the Northern Hemisphere. This is dire. This is really what is going to happen. And another phenomenon is going to happen, which is, or is happening now, which is that the fish are becoming smaller. And that is something that we published a few years ago, and then lots of people were surprised about it. You see that this fish that, what is it called, Nemo, the fish that, anyway. And I need to explain that. And basically, fish, as you know, they breathe through gills, right? They don't have lungs. Well, lungfish do, but marine fish don't have lungs, and they breathe through gills. And it is very difficult to breathe through gills because water doesn't have as much oxygen as air, and it's difficult to inhale water, and it doesn't have really much oxygen. So it is very difficult for fish to breathe. And there is another thing about gills. Even though they look like they are three-dimensional bodies, they are really a two-dimensional body, because like the radiator in front of a car to cool the engine, because you in a car you have air coming in, and it takes the heat out of the radiator and then it takes it off. Well, in gills, the water hits the gills, and the gill take the oxygen out of the water, and the deoxygenated water leaves the gills. Now, if you want to have bigger gills, you can make them higher or wider, but you cannot make them deeper, because if you put a gill behind a gill, all you get is deoxygenated water. So there is no point. So gill can grow only in 2 dimensions. This is something that people have problems wrapping their mind around, but they cannot grow in 3 dimensions. But the body grows in 3 dimensions. So That means that as fish get bigger, they have less and less gill per volume or gill per weight. And this, you can see it here. The gill area per body weight decrease as the body weight increases. So basically a big fish is not getting enough oxygen into its body. And there is a point, this W, this big W, at which it cannot grow further because it doesn't, because if it were bigger, it would have even less gill area per body weight. So they cease to grow. Now, imagine that something causes the oxygen demand to increase. They need more oxygen. Well, in that case, the size at which they stop growing would be smaller. And that would be picture B on the right. And that is precisely what happened with fish. Remember, fish have no temperature of their own. They take the temperature of the water. So you can have a fish at 15 degrees centigrade, it has this size. And if you increase the temperature to 20 degrees centigrade, then it has a higher oxygen demand. And this oxygen demand forces it to be smaller. That is the reason why things get smaller, where fish get smaller at when the temperature increases. And one can then play with these thoughts and look at where the fish get smaller, and that's a map of size reduction. Now, finally, a last point. The global warming is not something that will happen in the future. It is something that is happening now. That is actually, you can detect the first signal in the 70s. And so this map, for example, is 70s to 2009. Where is it getting warmer? You can see that it is getting warmer a lot in the northern hemisphere. In the Southern Ocean, it's blue. It's getting a bit colder, but it's actually getting warmer altogether. So we identified in a paper in 2013 a trick to use the fish as thermometer. The fish tell us how warm it is. You do it like this. You remember this fish that in China that had a temperature, a preferred temperature of 15 degrees. Well, this is the temperature that fish prefer is very much fixed. They cannot change the preferred temperature very easily, even through mutation and Darwinian selection. Remember, Charles Darwin was right. Even with Darwinian selection, you cannot get a change very rapidly because temperature regulates how enzyme function. And one enzyme links with another enzyme, which link with another enzyme. So the mutation would have to encompass all the enzyme, and such mutation don't exist. So it is a very slow process. Actually, temperature is fixed. The preferred temperature is very much fixed for hundreds of years, thousands of years. So if a species of fish has a preferred temperature of 8 degrees, another one 10, another one 15, another one 6, you can compute the average temperature of the catch by weighting by the catch. So this concept of temperature of the catch, mean temperature of the catch, you can plot it against time and look at the panel on top. So basically, on your coast, along the coast of Maine, the fish that are there are fish that before, many of them were in Florida or in the Carolinas. Basically, they have come to you. Now, these were fish with higher preferred temperature than the one that were in the Gulf of Maine. And the one that like the Gulf of Maine before, they now in Canada because it's getting warmer. That's the reason why you get at least in the summer all kind of weird fish that people don't know. And so the temperature of the catch that Maine would have increase, and it increased in a fashion similar to sea surface temperature. And this is shown for all ecosystems of the world that are temperate and subtropical. So that can be shown again and again. It is the case that the mean temperature of the catch, as exemplified or as expressed by the catch composition of the catch of the fisheries catch, reflects the temperature increase that really takes place. Now in the tropics it's different, however. There the temperature really increase, but the mean temperature of the catch cannot increase above a certain level because the fish leave, but they are not replaced by fish with that have higher affinity, that have affinities for higher temperatures. So basically, there is a maximum temperature that it can handle, and beyond that, it stays there. And you have less fish, but you don't have other fish. Whereas in Maine, you will have fish from Florida and now fish from the Bahamas even, or the Caribbean, replacing the fish that you had. But in Florida, in the Bahamas, they cannot be other fish because they already are in a hot zone. So that means that basically, if you look at the left, in the subtropical and temperate ocean, you had in the 70s cold water fish, for example, in the Gulf of Maine, and a few fish in the summer that were coming from subtropical or tropical areas. And now you have more of this invasive species, actually, and in the future, that's all there is going to be. In the tropics, on the other hand, they have a few subtropical fish and tropical fish. This has more or less remained the same, except they don't have so many, and in the future, there's nothing left. That is about the trend, the long-term trend. Now, and I'm almost done. These changes, we don't notice them in a manner that is appropriate. And the reason for that is because of a phenomenon I call shifting baseline, in a little paper of 1 page that you see here. Basically, if you are a kid, you're around 20 years old, or less, or more, you are entry. You are the last generation here. You see nature around you, and the Gulf of Maine and stuff. You will have a career, I hope. You will a long life, I hope. And at the end of this long life, you will notice changes vis-a-vis what was there when you were young. And then these changes, you will believe in them because you can see them. But N2 also experience that. That is your parents, but it's less credible because you haven't really seen it. You believe them, and your grandparents, you don't believe them because you always tell stories that, yeah, it's always the same. And beyond that, you don't even know. So basically, every generation has its own baseline as to assess change, but it shifts with every generation. It shifts down. So the extent of the change that happens of the total change that has happened over the generation is not perceived. And so I remember I was in Maine a few centuries ago, actually. It was 20 years ago, and I was in Portland or somewhere, and there was a young man, the director of fisheries at the time, and he was all excited about a fishery for sea cucumbers. And sea cucumbers, they look, I don't dare to say, but they look like turds, really. They look disgusting. They are exported to China and stuff. And he was all excited. And I told him, but you know what? Why don't you try to rebuild the cod and the redfish that were there 20, 30 years ago? And he looked at me like I was a Martian, like I was weird, because to him, all these stories about cod in the Gulf of Maine and redfish and beautiful bounty, it was stories. It was not real. He wanted to have sea cucumbers fisheries, and so these anecdotes and this shifting baseline is really a big issue. I will skip aquaculture, and then I will be done, so that I can now answer your question. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Daniel, for that very interesting talk. And I must say I really appreciated your the historical perspective, particularly John Yellen's harpoons from Africa. It was a really nice way to start the talk. So we've got a couple of questions here to start us off. The first question kind of goes back to your discussion about gills. Question from Dennis Chasteen asks about, do fast swimming fish such as tuna have different gill area to fish mass than slower swimming fish?
Yes, very much so. They have gills that are huge. In fact, if you could unfold them, they would cover a football field. And they have because they have such enormous gill, they have a metabolic performance that is almost similar to that of mammals. And that's the reason why the temperature also is higher than the water around them. And these are the very unique. There is only tuna and sharks, some big sharks do that. And that is because the gill area is immense. But the space between the lamellae is absolutely tiny. And so they have to put an immense pressure for water to flow between the gill lamellae. And therefore, if they don't swim all the time and push water into their mouth, they would choke. And that is the difference between a tuna and a grouper. A grouper can be, or a redfish, or even a cod, can be quiet on sitting on a rock and will not choke. A tuna would choke, would die. Yep.
Interesting. Another question here from Mike Sigler. He says, great talk, thank you very much. He says here, fish distributions are affected by warming temperatures, and you've predicted future distributions on this basis. Ecological processes are also affected by warming, such as things like at the bottom of the food chain with spring bloom timing, for instance. Have you explored methods to add effects on ecological processes to your global scale predictions?
Oh, yes, we have, but we find if you want to stick to global prediction, this I would call it second order effect, are not very important. They are important if you want to go deeper into a specific area. So I would suggest that if you study the Gulf of Maine, you'll have to take care of this second order effect. But in the global studies, they don't really change the global patterns.
And is that just, that's a spatial issue then?
Basically, if what you're saying is the fish are moving toward the poles at this rate, the countries like Norway will benefit, or Greenland, some others will lose, like Indonesia. That remains true whether or not you build this second order effect. And in fact, the map that I've shown you, which you can keep because you can have the PowerPoint and you can distribute it around, was the first map that showed what might happen in the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change. It was the first map of the ocean biodiversity being affected, because before people talk about agriculture and so on. And obviously such map can be refined. Instead of, we use projection from one big program that NOAA produces that produce temperature fields in the future. My friend William Chung, who was the first author of these papers, now he does them with 5 different models, one from England and so on. Because if you look with ensemble models, if they all tell you the same thing, even though they are built on different assumptions, then it is a first a strong effect, and so on. So you can refine these things, and you have to, if you want to make mitigation. Again, if you want to work locally, for example, the Gulf in the Gulf of Maine area, then you have to get more precise result that can guide you toward a mitigation strategy. Yeah.
Thank you for that. So your final slide that you hopped over caught the eye of Diane Foster, and she says that was a terrific talk. Thank you very much. But she's interested in learning a little bit more about your perspective on the role of aquaculture in the ocean.
Basically, I skipped it because it was there is a can of worm that one has to open. But in very short, the aquaculture is not one thing. Aquaculture has 2 basic elements. Like agriculture is raising plants, wheat and corn and stuff, and raising animals, cattle and pigs and stuff. And a ton of cattle and a ton of hay cannot be added. They are not, they are essentially categorically different, right? And one is meat and the other is fodder or food or whatever. In aquaculture, we similarly, there is the animals that we feed, the salmon and other carnivores, right? And they are the ones that we don't feed, the bivalves. Now, much of aquaculture, about 2/3 is in the world is non-fed aquaculture, or fed things that are fed with agricultural residues. In other words, no meat. About 2/3 of aquaculture. But in the West, when we think about aquaculture, we always have in mind aquaculture of carnivores, salmon, sea bass, and so on. So we're using the same term, but we mean something completely else. And this form of aquaculture, of carnivores, does not produce fish. It consumes fish. And it is very difficult to get into heads that a fish produce a salmon is not a net addition to the seafood available. It's a subtraction because they need more seafood to grow than they themselves represent. And the aquaculture industry lies about it with no end. And the they will not. The public doesn't understand that aquaculture, as aquaculture B, I call it for bad, aquaculture A, like agriculture, right? Aquaculture B is consuming. The public doesn't believe it. They believe that aquaculture ought to be a net addition, but it's not. And the problem is that China, which produces 60% of the world aquaculture, of which 2/3 is aquaculture, the good one, A, is moving toward aquaculture B, is moving toward producing carnivores. And to do that, they need to import fish meal. And this stuff, this glop that I showed that they catch in their own water is fed to aquaculture. In other words, they accept that the fisheries produce crap because they can feed that to the aquaculture. But actually, if you count the fact that a huge amount of the food is lost, this is conversion efficiency of 10%. It is actually a net loss of fish, and increasingly the aquaculture, the fish meal, the fish oils that they need, is coming from developing countries, and developing countries are supplying the fish that is needed for aquaculture in China or in the US or in Norway with fish, and these are fish that they themselves eat or ate, but do not have before. The more aquaculture B there is, the less people have fish to eat. Except that the people are not us; that's them, and our willingness to disconsider, for example, West African who see their fish now leave their country and feed aquaculture in the world. Our willingness to dismiss their needs in favor of aquaculture is the big problem of aquaculture. So that's the kind of worm I didn't open. I didn't want to open, but it is essentially this a ranch in Texas raising cattle and a farmer in Iowa raising crop. They are not in the same thing. They are not. It's not the same thing. And aquaculture is like that. Is a word that covers two industries that are fundamentally different.
And it presents a huge challenge, I'm sure, for how to feed them moving forward. So the next question gets at that a little bit, and I think harks back just to your sort of Malthusian perspective on population growth and your comment about, people aren't content with where they are, so they move, and then the declining resources issue creates some challenges, right, for managers around the world. And so the next question here, which I think might be a good one to end on, how do you keep hope in your work and manage your expectations when sharing your wealth of information with?
Basically, hope and optimism and pessimism and stuff don't come into the picture at all. There is a challenge, and the challenge is met by people who don't like what happens and would like to do it better. And you don't ask yourself, am I going to succeed? Because if we put this question first, we would never have done the things that have been done. Some of you will have seen the film where Churchill says, we're going to fight them on the beach. We're going to fight them, the Nazi in 1940. They were just about to jump onto Britain. And he defied them. He said, we will fight them everywhere. We'll fight them in the hills. We'll fight them on the beaches, in the forest, and we'll fight them. And he didn't say, if we win, we will fight them. Or a hope that we will fight them. And basically, there is a challenge, and you meet it. Your Lewis, the parliamentarian who just died.
Yes, John Lewis.
He was saying exactly the same thing. When you see something that is not right, say something. And basically, these things that I spoke about, some of them are not right. So I say something. And that is the only thing that matters. You say something because something is not right. You don't ask yourself, am I going to be successful? Right here, you don't know whether you're going to be successful. That is the future, right? So it is you say something about something not being right. And this whole thing about global warming, whether or not we're going to be successful to halt it, it all depends on us saying something and doing something.
Right. Yeah, I think that is a very appropriate sort of message for these times, I would say.
Yep. Matching
the call to action. Well, Dr. Pauly, we're a little bit past 8:30, so we've gone over the hour. So I don't want to take much more of your time, but I really want to thank you very much for giving us this hour and your talk. I really appreciate hearing your perspectives. I know everyone else does in the audience. So thank you very much. We hope to, next time you give a rock talk, we hope to have you actually out on Appledore Island. We'd love to have you over here in the Gulf of Maine next time you come east. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And all of the SML staff. So for all of our listeners this evening, this is the end of tonight's Rock Talk. Want to let you know that we have another Rock Talk again scheduled same time next week. Please, you can register through our webpage, shoalsmarinelaboratory.org. Dr. Maya DeVries will be speaking with us same time next week. So we look forward to seeing you then, and thank you all very much for coming. Take care. Have a good rest of your week. Have a good evening. Good night.